Welcome back to Scholar. In the first part of the show, we were taking a look at what to expect on the third edition of the E10 International Marathon. We spoke to the county's deputy governor, who said that, of course, they're also using this event to also talk about gender-based violence. Remember, they also launched the 16 days of activism, and of course, she spoke about that. Now, I want us to shift gears. We move away from the E10 International Marathon, but we still with athletics, but now on a totally, not even athletics, but the whole world of sports. But we talk about the issue of doping. I want to speak to the CEO of the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, that is Sarah Shibuse. She tells us, they've had clinics around the country, how this fight is going on. And remember, a few weeks back, CS for Sports, Kipchumba Murkomen, in Parliament said that, some committees, rather the Committee for Finance, had withdrawn a substantial amount of money that was meant to go ADAK's way. So we'll also be talking about that. So allow me to welcome here. But of course, we want to begin with the core issue on the fight against doping in the country. They are here in Elgeyo Marakwet, which is the mecca of athletics. Good afternoon, Sarah. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm fine, thank you.
Good to have you on Scoreline. Yes, what are you doing in Elgeyo Marakwet?
We are having a series of anti-doping education sessions. We started on Monday, and we are ending today with the national government administrators and the county government administrators. But we've been with the sports administrators, the federation officials. We've also been with the community leaders, the clergy from both the Christian and the Muslim. And we've also been with the athletes for 2 days, just to sensitize them on matters anti-doping.
Something that you've spoken that raises my mind is the clergy. How does the clergy come in?
Moral issues, because doping really is somebody trying to cheat their way into winning whatever sport event that it is. And so the clergy are able to talk to these athletes and tell them that whatever the Bible says about cheating and falsifying things for gain. So it hits home better when the clergy are the ones who bring this out for the athletes.
Yes, you are in Elgeyo Marakwet, which the county that has lots of athletes. How are they taking this message that you are trying to spread across the country?
You know that this is the home of champions, and they are very particular about how their county is being perceived. So they have really taken it up well. They have understood how we want to collaborate with them, how we want them to help us to sensitize the athletes, but also the community at large. Because these athletes belong to families, they belong to communities. And so when we are sensitizing all these people and all these stakeholders, then it means that the athletes are able to have a wholesome sort of education on clean sport. Yes, so they have really, the uptake has been very good.
Yes, earlier on I'd spoken to the CEC for Sports, Elgeyo Marakwet County, that is Purity Koima. She told me that the county is working hand in hand with the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to make sure that, tomorrow's marathon, they have clean athletes. But aside from the marathon, they are also working hand in hand with you to make sure that all athletes in this county, are clean. Probably if you can tell us, the chemistry of the work that you're doing between the Elgeyo Marakwet County and ADAK.
Yes, the county has been very supportive. From the governor himself and the CEC, Madam Purity, we've been working with her for the past 3 years now, especially because of the marathon. But even aside from the marathon, they've been able to invite us for many other education sessions that we've had with them, that they have organized as a county, and they've included us in that education session, just so that the athletes who not only come from this county but who come to this county to train are able to be sensitized on clean sport. And so we work very closely together. We've had many sessions, and this week now for this calendar year is like a culmination of all the sensitization sessions we've been having with them. Yes.
Yes, and before I let you go, mmepata pesa?
Pesa bado hatujapata, but what I can say is that my cabinet secretary and the principal secretary are working very hard to ensure that we get. They've had sessions with the National Treasury, they've had sessions with the Sports Fund just to see where we can get our funding reinstated as soon as possible. So they are working on that, and I know even the National Treasury has had a session with me just to promise that yes, they have received the request and they've understood now the sensitivity of the issue so that they can be able to reinstate our budget. Hopefully they've included it in the supplementary budget, so we are hoping by the end of this calendar year, maybe by December or January, we'll have the money for sure, because our programs have stalled. Yes.
Thank you very much. Of course, Sarah Shibuse, the CEO of the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAK, speaking to us on whether they've received money from the government. And aside from that, you know, the sessions they are having here, the clinics they are having here in Elgeyo Marakwet County. Now, I want to speak to Dr. Martin Yauma, also from the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. And, Martin, it looks like today in the morning you had a morning run.
Yes, I had a small morning run just to keep fit and exercise in this high altitude area.
Yes.
Which everybody yearns to come and train here. So it has been very refreshing and very nice.
Yes. Tell us about doping education.
Yeah, doping education, it's first call for anybody who is involved in sports, whether you are a coach, you are an athlete, or any other support personnel that is supporting this athlete. So the first point of call on anti-doping should be education, because you need to be aware, you need to understand the rules and regulations, so that then when we go forward in practicing clean sport, you actually understand the reason as to why we are advocating to protect the fundamental rights of our athletes who participate in a doping-free environment, which needs to be a fair environment for everybody, so that when one wins clean. Yeah.
Yes, there is that notion that is out there that when you talk about doping, it's only athletics, but that is not the case. As an agency, what are you doing to demystify that?
First of all, the universal term for an athlete is a player. Any player, whether you're playing rugby, whether you're playing football, whether you're playing any other sport that is competitive and is an organized sport, you are referred to as an athlete. And in that particular competition, the environment has to be fair, so that then the spirit of sports can be realized. And therefore we, as Anti-Doping Agents of Kenya, we are covering all sports disciplines in the country. We want to make sure that anybody who is involved in any organized sports competitions in the country, they are being involved in a very clean way. So apart from athletics, where we are laying more emphasis on because of the risks that are involved, but also other sports, we are trying as much as possible to reach out to other sports disciplines to make sure that we sanitize the whole sporting sector in the countly. Yeah.
You know, I was speaking to Madam Sarah, the CEO, if you guys are getting money, but Kenyans out there will want to know, will want to ask themselves, why will the Anti-Doping Agency get, a lot of money? They don't understand. So if you can explain to Kenyans why this testing is very expensive.
Yeah, first of all, this testing and the whole anti-doping program, we solemnly depend on government funding. And the reason as to why we solemnly depend on government funding is because of conflict of interest that might arise. Because if you have an event organizer or corporate that is sponsoring a sports team or a sports club, giving us money to undertake anti-doping activities, then there will be a little bit of conflict of interest. So we have to be impartial, okay? And that's why we solemnly depend on government. Testing, it's a very expensive affair. one test will cost you about 40,000 to 60,000 Kenya shillings. And this simply because the accredited laboratories or approved laboratories, there are very few across the world. We don't just take our samples to any laboratory. It has to be accredited. And most samples, we take them outside the country, in Qatar, in Geneva, and other developed countries. And therefore, it makes it very expensive, first of all, to ship the samples and to pay for the analysis for the laboratory. And sometimes these payments are done in dollars because of the exchange rate, so it becomes very high. And therefore, then it becomes important that we need to adequately fund the anti-doping program. Then, of course, also the sporting fraternity in the country is huge. We have so many athletes in the country, so many sports disciplines in the country. We need to reach all of them. We need to go to where they are. It costs us to facilitate us to get to where they are and be able to disseminate information. And many other programs that are related to the same when it comes to information sharing, intelligence gathering and investigations, issues to do with results management of cases, and just making sure that the whole anti-doping rule violations is well enforced and regulated. And that therefore it calls for all of us to support the program. We resource it properly so that then we are not declared non-compliant, because that's one of the fundamental areas that the World Anti-Doping Agency is looking at: adequate funding for the anti-doping program to ensure that the anti-doping, the sports fraternity is clean in the country.
Dr. Martin, there's a term that Kenyans normally hear, and I want, because I know what it means, you know what it means, but probably there are people that don't understand what it means when it comes to doping, and we've seen it with a number of sportsmen and women, and you see somebody got suspended because of whereabouts. If you can, and this is something that has happened to a lot of Kenyan sportsmen and women. If you can explain to the people watching you what it means.
First of all, when you define doping, doping is violating any of the 11 established anti-doping rule violations. So we have 11 anti-doping rule violations. Apart from the use of performance-enhancing substance, whether you can inject or take or in whatever form, that's just one definition of doping. And there are other 10 definitions, and one of them is whereabout failures. This is a situation where there are those athletes who have been identified based on various criteria and placed in what we call athletes registered testing pool. Basically, it's like a database. These athletes, they are supposed to be available for testing at any time without advance notice. And now we, as the agency, we need to know where they are. So there is a system called Anti-Doping Administration Management System, which applies across the world, where athletes are expected to file their whereabouts, where they're supposed to be found. And what we tell the athletes is that they need to log into the system, they have an account, and whenever they move places, for example, if you are here in A10, for example, these athletes who are coming here for this marathon, those ones who are in the registered testing pool, they're supposed to go to the system and say, I will be in A10. And the system requires that within a span of 24 hours, please give us 1 hour where you think that when you think that you will be available for testing within that particular day. So you need to tell us where exactly you're going to be. So and so those athletes, there are some situations where athletes don't file correctly their whereabouts. They say they are in 10, but they are somewhere else. So when we come to 10, we don't find them, and therefore we record what we call a missed test. If you get 3 missed tests within a span of 12 months, then that becomes an anti-doping rule violation. And there are situations whereby athletes give wrong information. They say they're 10 and they're not there, and we find that probably the information they are given as on that system is not accurate or not correct. So they have cheated within the system, and so that becomes a whereabout failure. There are situations where now there are others who don't give us any information at all. When the deadline comes that they're supposed to give this information, they don't give. But we try as much as possible to train them. We try as much as possible to have individual conversations with them, to navigate through the system so that they can be able to understand what they are expected to do. So when we get situations where we have 3 missed tests, or we have a missed test or a whereabout failure, so long as those violations are 3 consecutively within a span of 12 months, then that becomes a whereabouts failure, which is now an anti-doping rule violation that can be prosecuted in the sports tribunal, that can lead to a sanction for those athletes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Martin Yauma. Of course, I know you're an educator, and we probably will schedule a totally different show where you'll come and explain these terms that we normally get to hear, and educate Kenyans on what Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya is doing, and of course how the fight has been so far ever since the agency was set up. Thank you very much. That is Dr. Martin Yauma from